Hi, everyone. I know class was kind of rushed this morning, and again, my apologies about Zoom. I had an issue again with my, I guess my Gmail was a little mixed up, and so I wasn't in the right Zoom room. But in any case, a couple of things about the schism. I think it was Sophia who asked a question. Somebody asked a question in the chat about what the circumstances were that led to the schism. And I think there's a few things that become important. And, one of the things that is really interesting about the visual that we're showcasing here, the Hagia Sophia, you kind of see the significance of religion in Byzantine by the creation of this large-scale cathedral. This is like a huge technological feat. The Hagia Sophia, it's a domed cathedral, kind of the largest at its time. And ultimately, it does become something that is very visually stimulating, like a lot of the Orthodox religious practices. So the use of icons, for example. The image that we're looking at is actually much more modern, and it is after the time period of the Ottoman Empire taking over Constantinople. So what we're looking at is a lot of representation that is connected to the religion of Islam. And what's kind of interesting is that in Islam, and this may have been an influence on Leo III, there generally is not representation of any type of divinity in visual form. It's seen as idolatry. That's, just as much the case in today's time as it was in the time period of the 700s. And you can see kind of represented in the beauty of what is this building. Some of the art that is displayed is not iconography, right? We see maybe some Arabic lettering from the Quran. We might see some geometric representations, that are kind of an art form and meant to be beautiful, but not visual depictions. If you were to actually kind of go behind the walls, there would be some representation of Christian icons. So at one time there might have been that. It's kind of an interesting thing that we can actually have like layered histories, in this particular building. And it maybe speaks to, this modern debate over whether the Hagia Sophia should be a museum, a mosque, a cathedral, or whichever, kind of speaks to some of the issues that are going on within Turkey's political structure, but it also speaks to maybe the larger history about why historical past is just really important to us today, right? Religion kind of connects to a lot of our identities, and this is just a pattern in world history. And the significance of the Hagia Sophia, to Byzantine, also to Ottoman Empire, and much of that is like a shared history for individuals who live in, say, Istanbul or in Turkey today, but which aspect of that history or even much more modern kind of secular government history, to respond to. It's kind of an interesting thing. So in any case, just wanted to note that there's likely some influence of the Islamic Empire on Byzantine, not only through the Ottoman conquest, but even earlier than that, on Pope Leo III's decision to abandon icons. It's probably something that connects with the Islamic heritage that is spreading in the 700s, okay? Again, this is kind of the icon idea, and if you were to visit in Eastern Orthodox Church in today's day and age, icons are still a very big part of the experience. It's a very visually represented type of religious kind of service. Oftentimes there's incense and a lot of sensory experiences that kind of connect with Eastern Orthodox religious practice. So to this day, that's kind of consistent. Some of the things, and I guess it was Ryan who asked about some of the differences in the monasteries, some things are very similar, right? So on both kind of parts of Europe, we see large developments of monasteries. These are individuals in society who are dedicating themselves to following the religion of Christianity. Some people in Byzantine have taken this to such an extreme, we refer to them as ascetics. The ascetics, for example, could be these folks known as pillar saints. The pillar saints are people who literally lived on a long tower that is very, very skinny. Somebody might have very little room to move, but people would live atop these towers, isolated from the rest of society for years. being given food by others. But the pillar saints are an example of kind of this extreme asceticism. Not all monks were like that. Quite a few of the monasteries in Byzantine were very connected to the people, probably even much more so than in Europe. It wouldn't be atypical for Byzantine members of society to experience much of their religious practice by interfacing with some of the monasteries, the monks in the monasteries. They would not be gaining sacraments there, but they might be discussing religion, talking about religious texts. They might also be accessing social services like, health care, or, they might be taking care of children. So the monasteries generally were not the hub for education. That was usually a service in Byzantine provided by the state. In the West, we see monasteries essentially becoming the centers for education. Not necessarily that the monasteries educated everyone. It's definitely not the case. It's not like there are schools in the monasteries in the West, but largely the literate classes are exclusively the religious orders. That's true for some time. Even early colleges in Western Europe, universities in places like Paris, are very designed for religious roles. People who graduate from college become priests in the Christian church. In Byzantine, we have many more opportunities for a variety of different tasks and also a lot greater diversity. So people are involved with some different things. The Great Schism, okay, this is kind of the last slide, and we'll note things here. A couple of big differences. One is that there's a great deal of political rivalry. Okay, so Constantinople is like the heart of Byzantine, and the emperor controls that. Okay, so we've got a secular political rule. In Western Europe tradition, one of the big authorities is centered in Rome, and that is the Pope, the head of the Christian church. So what's more important, Rome or Constantinople? This is like a geopolitical problem. Okay, and we see Byzantine trying to put in place, popes that are Greek speaking and kind of come from the Byzantine side of things. There's also missionaries. The church will start to spread its ideas, and we see both, doing this. We see a great deal of missionaries in Eastern Europe, who will become Catholic, who will become Eastern Orthodox, and we start to see representatives of the Pope hanging out in Byzantine, trying to get people to kind of follow the Pope, and this just isn't received well. There's a lot of political rivalry. Iconoclasm, who has greater power, the Byzantine emperor or the Roman Catholic Pope? That is essentially, the question, who is making decisions about the church. There's also some cultural and ritual doctrinal differences, and kind of put some of these ritual differences, the way the religion is practiced, some of these are an advent of the cultural changes in both societies. Some of these are actually religious debates, okay, that people actually disagree about what the meaning of Christianity is, okay? One example of some of the cultural differences, in the West, we tend to see bread, which is symbolic in Christianity. It's meant to be symbolic of the body of Jesus Christ. The bread in the West is got yeast in it, and it rises and it's leavened. In Eastern Europe, we see unleavened bread. It seems to be a nitpicky thing, like what's the big deal about that? Certainly not the breaking point between these two religions, but it develops into a difference. Marriage of priests in the Western Europe tradition, from the Pope all the way down to monks, there's vows of celibacy, no marriage, no sex. With the Byzantine, priests are invited to get married. It's seen as a cultural value, and to this day, in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, priests may have families, may be married. In the Roman Catholic tradition, part of the sacrament of becoming a priest still includes a vow of celibacy. In Byzantine, the liturgy, the actual words that are spoken by the religious leader of the priest, would be spoken in the vernacular language. Okay, and these might be a variety of different languages in Byzantine, but it might be representative of Greek, for example. In the Roman Catholic tradition, what we see is a dependence on formal Latin for the written and the spoken, and that's true in fairly modern times. Even in the early 1900s, many Roman Catholics heard masses was said in Latin. Okay, despite not being able to understand it, church was always spoken in Latin. There is a council rule of the authority of the Byzantine Church is a group of patriarchs who represent different locations. The Patriarch of Antioch, for example, or the Patriarch from maybe Constantinople was seen as very significant in the Byzantine tradition. Of course, the Pope is one individual in Rome. That is the style of leadership in the Roman Catholic tradition. And then there is some theological difference that has to do with something known as the Trinity. In Christianity, there is a sense that it's monotheistic, right? That's what we kind of say is one of the Abrahamic faiths, like Islam and like Judaism. Christianity is monotheistic. There's one God, but yet there's representations. There's God, there's the Son of God, Jesus Christ, who Christians believe was mortal at one time and then is also divine. And then there's a Holy Spirit. And the nature of this Trinity is actually debated between Byzantine and Roman Catholics. This is, what kind of derives from what? How is the Spirit derived from God or the Son of God? Answers to those questions are known as the debate over filioque, and that is a doctrinal difference, okay? Not something that's necessarily, a multiple choice question on the quiz, but it's important to recognize that in addition to the political debate, there were also religious theological issues. And probably the biggest reason for this is there are some more questioning that happens within the society, the religious society in Byzantine, and some of this may be because there's influence of other authority, classical Greek texts, Plato, Aristotle, these other authorities of knowledge create just some questions of religious texts. It's not uncommon to see that in the Western tradition, much less questioning of the Pope who was setting up the religious tradition. The Schism in 1054 is a formal mutual excommunication. So what makes 1054 significant? The churches basically resolved to separate. They had largely been separate, but this is going to be a breakup where Eastern Orthodox religion does not follow the Roman Catholic Pope, and the group of patriarchs essentially becomes the dominant kind of religious head of the Eastern Orthodox Church, but of course the emperor is more significant than even the patriarchs. So the religious structure and decision-making in Byzantine kind of continues in a Caesaro-Papist manner, but without the Pope, right? It's the king over this group of patriarchs. In Roman Catholic tradition, the Roman Catholic Pope, currently Pope Francis, is still the head of the Roman Catholic Church. And Roman Catholics believe that the Pope is like representative, essentially, of Jesus Christ on earth. So while the Pope is not divine, the Pope is somebody who is got an ear of God, in a sense. Okay, so there's representation. And to this day, we have different denominations. There will be further break-aparts of that Roman Catholic Church, and we see in the 14, 15, 1600s huge numbers of Protestant religions, many of which will have very different answers to some key questions. But the first kind of two denominations of Christianity that are really significant would be Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholicism. Okay, Roman Catholicism in the West and Eastern Orthodox in the East. Okay, have a really good rest of the day, and we'll see you tomorrow.